Let's start out with the take that you might hate. Josh Allen was arguably the best quarterback in the league last year. He ranked 3rd in quarterback rating and EPA, which if you don't know what expected points added is, I have a video that breaks it down. It's awesome because it's useful in defining how well a quarterback plays, as well as the offense and defense, so it's a real do-it-all stat. So, Allen was super elite in those stats, all the while having just the 11th best supporting cast, according to a metric that I've developed that looks at weapon and offensive line pass protection grades from PFF in conjunction with each other. So, he didn't really have the best supporting cast, and he was still putting up some of the best numbers in the entire league. In all, he was my best quarterback last year, which isn't to discredit Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. They're both fantastic quarterbacks, but I think during the regular season, Josh Allen was the best quarterback this past year. Somebody who definitely wasn't, though, is Mitch Trubisky, who is a hard evaluation as he was very poor this past season, but in general has been a low-end NFL starter caliber player. So as a backup, I think he should be good enough. As we move to the supporting cast, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you give it a like, and also subscribe, as both make massive differences. With that out of the way though, the offensive line for Buffalo was quietly exceptional, as they were 9th in pass blocking when combining ESPN's pass blocking win rates with PFF's pass blocking grades. So they were really solid in that regard. They were also really good in run blocking as well, as in combining those metrics again, but for run blocking, they were 12th best in the league. That's really, really good. Being roughly top 10 in both categories puts you in rarefied air, because most teams are a little bit stronger in one or the other, as they generally have not the most balanced of lines, with generally their interior being a bit better in run blocking and their tackles being a bit better in pass protection. So the fact that they were so good and so consistent is really a marvel. And 4 of their 5 starters return. The tackles and guards are the same, but the interior is shaken up a bit at center, with David Edwards filling in for the departing Mitch Morse. Morse earned a 64 PFF grade and was elite in pass protection and struggled a bit in the run game. Edwards is inversely more of a run blocker than pass protector, with his last PFF grade being surprisingly better than Morris's, with Edwards earning a 68 grade. So the line should be pretty similar to last year's unit, just likely a bit better in run blocking and a bit worse in pass protection. Depth-wise, there's no one worth mentioning, which is really scary, because if anybody goes down, there could be a pretty steep drop-off in the line. So I'm really hoping that they can stay healthy and Buffalo's offense can stay afloat then. Speaking of their offense staying afloat, there is a bit of a fear with that, because moving to their weapons, they don't have the greatest of weapons. Khalil Shakir was 78th in yards per game and 13th in yards per reception, so Shakir offers an element of a deep threat. He also is good at converting short and intermediate targets into longer gains, which is extremely valuable both to win deep and to turn those shorter plays into longer ones. So he's a very solid player. I think he is, if he continues what he was for the second half of the season, I think he clearly is good enough to be a wide receiver 1. But there is a little bit of a fear with that, because he didn't get seriously involved in the offense until about week 8. So there is fear that he just has a small sample size and is thereby a little bit more erratic. If he had that half-season efficiency for the full year, though, he would have been much better in his stats, ranking 44th in yards per game. So that's a clear difference between 78th and 44th. So Shakir really could be a low-end number one with upside to be a mid-tier number one, I would say. Curtis Samuel is likely to be their number two receiver. He was 74th in yards per game and 95th in yards per reception. So he offers another short yardage option to Buffalo, and his numbers could go up considerably because Josh Allen is far superior to Sam Howell, if you didn't know. And there will be more opportunities for Samuel in Buffalo as a number two than there was in a surprisingly crowded Washington receiving room. So he could put up better stats than he did this past year. He is a solid receiver. I think he's going to be their number two, at least for the start of the season, I should say. Because the person that might be their number two down the stretch is Kollmann, who is a marvel athletically. He is big, he's tall, he's strong, he's pretty quick for being the size that he is, which I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to look that up, and I'm going to try to fill the air as I do that. Yeah, he's 6'4", 215 pounds. He's a big boy, and that really shows in his play. He is super physical at the catch point, and he really wins balls that he shouldn't necessarily win. He is just that physically dominant. He was my 38th best player in the draft, and he was drafted 33rd, so I'm fine with that. I think that's a good draft selection, especially because they do need receiving talent. Second round, wide receivers usually fare very well in their rookie years, having a nice 69 PFF grade since 2019. Kollmann will need to clean up his routes a bit, but as I mentioned before, he's a great contested catch winner and can stretch the field with his athleticism, so he should be rather productive. Continuing with their trend of short yardage options, though, Dalton Kincaid was 14th in yards per game among tight ends and was 25th among tight ends in yards per reception for them. So he's another short depth of target threat that can turn short plays into a bit longer of ones, but will hopefully develop his route running further to be more of a deep threat. That would be very useful because they just don't really stretch the field too vertically. At running back, James Cook is sort of just there, ranking 30th of 59 running backs according to PFF grade, which sounds about right. I've never really been overly impressed with him, and I think a lot of his production comes because of just how great Josh Allen is, that defenses are trying to stop him as a passer, and also they focus on him as a rusher as well. So I think Cook gets a lot of benefit from that, and from the good offensive line as well. Buffalo is pretty set with backups, as Mac Hollins and Dalton Knox are both very solid options at wide receiver and tight end, respectively. So they've insulated rather well from injury there. Hollins last got serious reps in 2022, when he would have been on pace for 68th best yards per game production if he had his 2022 pace in 2023. He also would have been 53rd in yards per reception, so he can get downfield somewhat effectively, not greatly, but with some efficiency, and that's something that Buffalo will desperately need, because as I mentioned, they just don't have too many options that can do that with Gabe Davis departing. Additionally, they have depth at running back with Ray Davis being their fourth rounder this year, so they have depth. They just don't necessarily have the star talent for their weapons. Moving to their defense now, this is actually where things get fun, which sounds so backwards because Josh Allen is one of the most fun players in all of football, which is a bit redundant. Football is fun in general, but Josh Allen takes it to a whole different level by just being a complete maniac for half of the plays, with a good chunk of them being good plays, and a fair chunk of them being ridiculously bad plays. With that out of the way, we can go back to defensive backs now, which is what we're here for. At cornerback, the Bills are absolutely elite. Christian Benford was graded 8th out of 127 by PFF, which makes sense as he's an elite cover corner with his plus 6'1" size. That makes him a good matchup for almost anyone. And he's also very good as a run defender too, so he is great in every aspect of the game. He will likely be somebody that Buffalo tries to hold on to for the long term, as he really should be in their future plans. He's that good. Someone else that will be in their future plans is Rasul Douglas, who ranked 11th out of 127 in PFF grade. He's been elite for 3 years now, and he does very well against the run too, which I feel like is worth mentioning because I always say it's fine if you can't defend the run as a cornerback. You're not paid to defend the run, but it's very nice when you can do that. And their 2 starters on the outside can definitely do that. And with Douglas, he's 6'2". He uses that very well to break up passes most couldn't. And he's also good at being physical at the line when Buffalo does get into press situations, which is not very often. They don't play that aggressive of a defense compared to some other teams, especially with college getting started back up too. They play nowhere near as aggressively as the college teams do because they can press like 20 yards downfield in college, it seems. So they don't play a lot of press with him, but when they do, he's effective. And Teron Johnson was 17th out of all corners. If it wasn't clear, Buffalo's worst cornerback is still fantastic. He's a top 20 corner in the league. That's egregious. Somebody's got to do something. Think of the children. He isn't much against the run, but he is a good coverage corner and can blitz a bit too. So I will take him any day of the week. He is a fantastic player in his own right. As far as safeties are concerned, Buffalo is much weaker there than they are at cornerback. Damar Hamlin has an awesome comeback story from, I believe, cardiac arrest it was, on the field. But as a player, he is a questionable starter, I would say. He only logged starter reps in 2022, where he was graded as PFF's 61st best safety out of 88. So he likely won't be a plus starter, but also won't be much of a hindrance either. Taylor Rabb is a bit worse. He ranked 85th out of 95 safeties by PFF grade. He isn't very versatile either. He's mainly just a deep safety, nor is he particularly strong against the run or pass, so he's not really anything to get excited about. Like with wide receiver, though, Buffalo has strong depth with Kaiir Elam at cornerback, second-rounder Cole Bishop at free safety, where second-rounders average a 67 PFF grade since 2019, and Mike Edwards ranking 82nd out of 95 safeties according to PFF. He's been bad back-to-back years, but may find success in Buffalo like many others have. He at least offers good versatility, as he logged 100 plus snaps in the box at slot cornerback and as a free safety, so that's something to be excited about, I guess. As for their front seven, this is where we stall a little bit because for their defensive line, they do have some star talent, so that's something to be excited about. But they don't have a great defensive line as a whole, I wouldn't say. Despite being in a defensive line rotation that decreased his pass rushing snaps by up to about 200 snaps, Greg Russo ranked 27th out of 122 edges in pressures. He's also very good against the run, which you would hope for. He is a big edge rusher, and he's able to use that to his advantage. He is 265 pounds, roughly. He's also 6'6", so he is massive in every way. And he does effectively use that. He will oftentimes be the first to contact with you in pass protection, not you specifically. If you weren't aware, I'm guessing you're not a professional offensive tackle. If you're listening to this, if you are, comment in the comment section below. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, he's very good. He's super big, and he used that to his advantage, which is very nice. With 150 less snaps than even Russo, though, AJ Epinesa still ranked a respectable 70th in edge pressures. He isn't quite as good as a run defender, though, so he is not too great of a complementary edge. He's a very low-end edge, too, and that's what he's being thrusted into, with Von Miller's fall-off being so tremendous. On the interior, though, they do have some stuff that's good. The Bills have a keeper in Ed Oliver, who was 4th out of 142 in defensive interior pressures. He's rather poor against the run, ranking 92nd out of 137 in PFF run defense grade for defensive interior players. But he remains a strong plus for the Bills as a whole. I would take him any day of the week. He is somebody that just causes mismatches because he's too fast for slow-footed players, and he's too strong for quick players most of the time. So he is a beast as a pass rusher. Somebody that doesn't get talked about enough is Daquan Jones, who didn't play at all this past season, but when he was healthy in 2022, he was tied for 34th out of 141 for defensive interior pressures, and was solid against the run too. So he is a nice sort of addition because he just didn't really play last year. I can't remember if he did, in fact, miss the entire season, or if he actually played like a couple snaps. Oh, he played 240 snaps this past season. So he played like a couple games. I don't know how many games that equates to be completely honest with you. But yeah, he didn't play for much of the year. And he's going to be a key piece for this defense. The Bills don't have much depth unless Von Miller can turn back the hands of time, which seems unlikely. He really struggled this year as both a pressure getter and run defender, which is really sad because he's been so good at setting the edge for so long and such a disruptive pass rusher as well. As for depth on the interior, things are also kind of bleak, as Austin Johnson is their best depth defensive interior, and he was 77th in pressures this year and is a really poor run defender, so he doesn't have much going for him. For our final positional group, linebacker, they have a bit of a unfortunate situation at hand because their linebacker one is Matt Milano, who's an elite do-it-all linebacker. He sadly will miss a good chunk of the year after suffering torn biceps. No real update has been given on it, so I'm not sure how long he's going to miss, but that seems like something that will eat up a good chunk of the year, which is really unfortunate. He's missed time back-to-back years now, which sucks, especially because he is such a fantastic player. After him, Nicholas Morrow and Terrell Bernard are both good options, ranking 36th and 43rd in PFF rank, respectively. Morrow is a stout run defender that can struggle in coverage, and Bernard is pretty much just a lesser version of Morrow, with more upside, as Bernard is 4 years younger at age 25. So he has potential at least to improve. Morrow seems more like an established player, but he isn't a bad player by any stretch, so it's not the worst to send them both out there. You could do a lot worse for a linebacking core than what Buffalo has. In all, the Bills are stacked. Josh Allen is a top 3 quarterback. Their offensive line is pretty darn good, especially at the tackles. They're certainly missing elite talent for their weapons since Diggs is gone now, but their receivers are still solid. Defensively, they're very well coached, have elite talent on the defensive line with Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau, and then some complementary pieces in Daquan Jones and AJ Epinesa, who are good and fine, respectively. Their linebackers are good enough, then the defensive backs are absolutely exceptional, as they might have the best corners in the league, if not they're second only to the Jets. Their safeties are a bit lacking, but not the absolute worst. They are still a real threat to win the Super Bowl even without Diggs as their number one, especially if Kollmann can reach his sky-high potential. Those are my thoughts. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more content.